President Trump said he's proud to shut down the government for the sake of border security. But take that word with a grain of salt because he's also proud of Eric and Don Jr.
Quarterback Kyler Murray led the Sooners to their fourth consecutive Big 12 championship. He won the Heisman Trophy and signed a $4 million contract to play Major League Baseball. His greatest accomplishment as a star athlete, however, is not beating up his girlfriend.
Since the beginning of the federal investigation into collusion with Russia, President Trump has called it a witch hunt more than 125 times. It's almost broken his record for calling Rosie O'Donnell a fat pig.
Aww. Roads that were severely damaged by last week's earthquake in Anchorage, Alaska, have already been repaired by crews working round the clock. The city credits its speedy recovery to the fact that President Trump did not toss them paper towels.
And finally, Tyler Perry spent over $430,000 to pay off customer layaway items at a Walmart in Atlanta. In exchange for his generosity, the location is changing its name to Tyler Perry's Medea Goes to Walmart. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, yes. Now You're a Man from DVDA and the great Trey Parker Matt Stone opus Orgasmo. It's a very appropriate song because someone has had their manhood challenged. And I don't mean me because this is a special day. Welcome to the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt, joined as always by Tamra Brown.
Am I behind? I don't get the reference.
Oh, there's a story that we're going to talk about
Okay,
in
great.
mere moments.
Oh, boy.
It's a great man-related story.
We're going to have a lot of talking points on this one.
That's all right. You will as soon as you understand what it is we're into. And, of course, in the booth, Bonjour Juliette, our friend from France, whom Tamara didn't know was French.
Hey guys! Very excited for this episode.
Yes, there's so much to talk about. And how do you say in French, how do you say, now you're a man?
Maintenant, je suis un homme.
It's just amazing to hear that. I knew how to say it, but I just wanted to make sure you didn't forget.
Yeah, totally.
So the title comes from Tamara and everyone out there in Trump Report land. Nancy Pelosi had a wild Oval Office meeting where she said afterwards that she tried to be a mom, but she also made fun of President Trump's manhood, referring to his obsession with the wall. The direct quote from Speaker-to-be Pelosi. It's like a manhood thing for him, as if manhood could ever be associated with him. Oh, burn! Snap. Speaker Pelosi, you might as well just start calling her that with that. So, do you think that grandstanding is just to kind of remind the Ocasio-Cortezes out there that, like, hey, this dog still has some fight in it?
First of all, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I think, is on board with Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, I think she is. But it's just, to the younger, the newly elected, like, hey, I'm here.
Yes, I think come out swinging. That's what will sway them. I think she should have said toxic manhood would have been a little bit more accurate. Like, I think what she intended with that comment is pretty accurate, which is he's dripping with toxic masculinity.
Well,
if that's what you want your definition of masculinity to be, well then, God help us all.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned dripping because she said
Oh,
it goes to show you get into a tinkle contest with a skunk, you get tinkle all over you. Well, that wasn't as strong, was it? Yeah, she sounded really tough, but. She's just, but she really did say she was trying to be the mom. Pence.
Well, tinkle is a word that a mom would use.
Yes, Pence and Schumer were both there, so you know it was a party. You know they got baked. No, so I found this to be interesting because there's a lot of things that annoy President Trump. There's things that you can brush off, but the fact that in a presidential debate back when there were, 13 more qualified than he candidates on the stage during one of those lengthy Republican presidential debates, he really had to talk about the size of his hands and what that meant. He's, I'm fine under, believe me. Which now it just seems quaint that he said that, because now it's just like, oh, it's just gotten so much worse. So I think that Pelosi definitely this is not a slip of the tongue. She's very carefully calculated this statement. Would you agree, Tamra?
I think she's speaking his language. He only knows how to communicate in jabs and insults, and not that these are all that, whoa, she went there.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's like, there's no drop the mic to it, but he communicates in insults. That's no surprise.
If this were a Hugh Grant movie, within the next 30 minutes they would end up dating. This is the point where it's like, oh, she's speaking my language. All right, I see. So, by the way,
she's not Eastern European, so I don't think that's likely.
Yeah, but neither was Minnie Driver. There's a lot of Hugh Grant movies out there.
No, I mean Donald Trump.
Oh, no, I'm talking about Hugh Grant. And by the way, if the notion of Trump and Pelosi also made you throw up a little in your mouth, please let us know in the chat. There is, obviously, there's other news that's going on, but I don't know. How much time could we really spend on this? Let's find out and spend the whole hour on it. No.
I'll tell you this. Chuck and Nancy, it's what I call my biceps.
Did you just hatch that, or have you been waiting?
I was thinking about tweeting that this morning, then I was like, no, that's dumb. I'll save it for the Trump report.
Well, dumb is what we do, and that's we appreciate you saving your dumb for here. The investigations getting circling a little closer. It's like the sharks have been swimming around for a long time, but the loop is definitely a little closer to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and I think that if you believe what you read, and I believe everything I read, that some of his allies are starting to feel that it's not so much of a witch hunt, because as I think I talked about last week, that sometimes when you dunk a woman who you thought was a witch, and this is like 500 years ago, so I'm sorry that they only thought women were witches back then, but that's just the way. Sometimes you'd actually get a witch, so this might be a witch hunt. But if you hunt long enough, you're probably going to find something. I don't know if you're going to find anything impeachable, but there's a lot of hopes, don't you think, Tamra, that the articles of impeachment could be laid out nice under the Christmas tree just in time for our friend Scott Moore, who, by the way, he's at Disneyland Hong Kong today.
Whoa.
Instead of with us. Where are those priorities?
Yeah, well, I hope he's talking about the 12th of the 11th hour. Is that what he usually says, right?
Yes. We're like at 11:57.
He's standing in line at Peter Pan right now, counting down where we are on the countdown clock. What I don't understand, here's my question, is that, so the Trump allies that are now saying like, well, maybe he's not as safe as we once thought he was. Now, is there some sort of Mueller information leaking within Washington that we haven't been privy to yet? Or like at this point, people close to him, 30 now, have admitted to some form of wrongdoing. So why now are his allies saying like, well, maybe there is a little something? Like, what is it that is making them, if they are in fact losing confidence? Like, I don't understand why now there's not been any specific
what's different now, because you don't hear something where you go like, oh yeah, this is the week where everybody should back away, as opposed to like, why didn't they back away a couple months ago, that sort of thing. Because
we still don't have, what if there's a nail in the coffin, Mueller's saving it. We don't know when he's done. We haven't. If there's going to be a nail in the coffin, which I don't personally think that there is going to be like some giant nailing him to the cross revelation. But,
no, I think he'd be behaving very differently if there were, some enormous cannonball to shoot directly at him. I think in terms of behaving differently, I'm talking about a fake beard and, a pocket full of passports and unmarked bills, that sort of behavior.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if he would. If there were, I just don't think that there's something that damning necessarily. I mean, there's certainly things that will get him, lawsuits, and I just don't know if there's anything anyway. But even if there was anything like super explicitly like, oh great, he's going to prison now, I don't think he would be acting weird because I don't think he has the ability to understand wrongdoing from any wrongdoing that he has possibly committed was in the name of, you know, whatever his bottom line or greater, like he's he excuses any he's not aware of illegal activity as far as he's concerned.
He's incapable of shame.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And incapable of probably general self-awareness. I definitely can see that. That I think that even if, I don't know who's his most trusted advisor, Ivanka. I don't even know. Even if whomever he really trusts, like, look, they really have something on you. He'd be like, at this point, he's just like, yeah, but it's a witch hunt and that's all fake news, so I'm going to be fine. Because you say it enough, eventually it kind of loses some of its impact. But
100%. I
think that smocking gun, as he tweeted about, I think that the smocking gun doesn't exist. I think that there are things that, maybe you would drag him in for questioning if he wasn't a presidential candidate. But a lot of this stuff, it's there's nothing that it seems like is really going to take him down as much as people want that.
What do we have right now is that there were misuse of campaign funds. We know that for sure. Misuse of campaign funds that he was fully aware of. We know that for sure. So any more than that, what could be the thing that could potentially send him to prison? Like what is the smoking gun that we're looking for?
Right, and again, you pronounced it wrong. It is smoking gun.
I apologize.
Yeah. So I think that I think that we've heard enough of these things, and you see you hear all the different things that other people are pleading and trying to get reduced sentences. They're implicating different people, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of like, he did this and here's why this is illegal. But interesting question in the chat from R. Scott Brown, wondering, would he get Secret Service protection in prison? And he references the former President's Protection Act. Thanks, Obama. I mean, that's been in place for a long time. Like Lady Bird Johnson, who I believe lived into her 90s, had Secret Service protection for her entire life. In fact, believe it or not, there's a great Nicolas Cage movie called Guarding Tess that's basically about the fact that this widow of a former president had a Secret Service detail. So that's existed for a long time. But it's a great question because, look, Nixon didn't go to prison. He still had a Secret Service detail. But, even a disgraced president still, maybe more than ever would have that. But let us know what you think about all of this there in the chat. Supposedly, and I don't think CNN is fake news, but I don't like when headlines have a source says. I don't love a source says. When it's like a high level cabinet source, I'm like, all right, I get that. But when you're just saying a source, I'm like, well, that could,
your friend Mindy.
I didn't know you knew Mindy. Yeah. But apparently there are rumblings that he sees impeachment as a real possibility, and he's actually concerned. But as we talk so often about the show, the Senate's not going to actually remove him from. So he could get impeached. So Bill Clinton got impeached. Still get to be president. So just think about how he'd probably get crowds to chant impeachment or something. He'd turn it into a thing. I don't think it's going to faze him. But I mean, this alleged source says that he's concerned. But like we were just talking about, there's nothing in his behavior that makes you think that he's worried about this. If he was worried about this, there would be a day where he didn't tweet, and he'd be like, "Uh-oh, what's wrong with him?" You know what I mean? If he just didn't weigh in on anything, especially if, I don't know, so if like a big blow up happened on The View that day, or maybe there was an attractive guest on Fox and Friends and he didn't tweet, you'd be like, oh man, what's wrong with him? So I think that's the indication that he would actually be worried. He's not acting like someone who's worried or capable of being worried.
Well, they say he's very, like, his anger level has, he's been even more stressed. He's been even more higher aggression than he normally is. That's the word, again, from various sources.
Yeah.
Ooh, whatever that means. But yeah, I mean, we can speculate from here to infinity, and it's all speculation at this point. I'm ready for the dang Mueller report to come out, for cripe's sake.
Yeah, criminy. Where is it? And, look, there's still a few shopping days for Christmas. I mean, come on already. What are we waiting for?
And I saw some headline where it was like Mueller wants to have a Christmas where this is over with. He wants to wash his hands of this business. So I suspect it's going to come out before the end of the year, Right.
Although I do think he would immediately head up to the North Pole and begin investigating Santa. I think that's probably why he needs it to. I mean, if you think about the lack of wages to the elves, just the bullying that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer experienced, he left He left the North Pole. He was shunned. Only when Rudolph proved that he could be useful did Santa come around. So,
Christian's joking, but are you aware that you are talking to somebody who manages Santa Claus in the Eagle Rock Plaza Mall right now?
I did not know that. And you manage him. For
3 seasons, I have worked with Mall Santa. And let me tell you this. If anybody out there thought that Santa Claus was not a Trump supporter, you would be incorrect. He's a 70-year-old white man. Of course Santa Claus voted for Trump.
A 70-year-old, by all account, very wealthy white man.
Of course he voted for Trump.
He doesn't pay taxes. That's why he's in, what they call the North Pole, but let's be honest, it's probably the Caymans. Mm-hmm. And
I mean, you could say he's a socialist because he just gives away stuff to people, especially needy people all around the world.
I mean, as long as you're Christian, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't,
I don't think that's a rule of Santa Claus.
He's not dropping anything off on either side of the West Bank. He just flies right past it. There's a whole part of the world where he's like, yeah, Santa doesn't go there. So, but what I really want
to me.
Really? So you didn't know that the Christ in Christmas references the fact that now look, you can be like, oh, but I like Santa too. I know I have Jewish friends who have Christmas trees.
You're saying only Christians acknowledge Santa Claus.
I'm saying that Santa only brings presents to Christians. I'm not saying that maybe a mixed family, a parent gives them presents. I don't think Santa goes to anyone other than Christians.
I think Santa brings presents to a lot of atheists. Don't you agree?
I think he does because he's trying to, just put a little love in their heart.
I think there's a good 10% of American Jews that probably receive presents from Santa Claus.
This is what people tuned in for, by the way. They wanted to hear this.
The hard-hitting news on Santa.
In a few minutes, we're going to talk about the failing North Pole Times and the fact that they're very weak on the Bumble. They're very encouraging of him. What I did want to talk about was a headline that the list of Trump campaign contacts with Russians grows to 16. Okay, that's a lot of people. Encompassing, I do love this headline, 2 of his adult children. Guess which 2? It's not Tiffany. An Olympic wrestler and a man with ties to the Russian military intelligence. I don't even need to read the article. That sounds like fake news to me. Tamra, there's nothing there. There's no there. The fact that his adult children and a man with ties to Russian military intelligence were involved in the campaign, that doesn't tell me anything. Does it tell you anything? Because I don't see anything.
I can't tell if you're being facetious or not.
It's kind of
do
like
you believe this article or no?
No, I do. But I mean, it's kind of what I do here on the show. It's like you can't really tell.
Sometimes I can't really tell.
But the Olympic wrestler is the one that stands out for me. I want to know more about him. But the senior figures include Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, Don Jr., and Ivanka. Oh. So Eric, for the first time ever, I'm going to say this. Eric was the smart one. He knew to stay away from this. Well,
Eric was playing Fortnite that day.
That's true.
He was just tied up with other things. I don't think
he went. Yeah, he was looking to meet the president of Idaho or something. Just the way that his mind worked. But anyway, look, lot of little breadcrumbs. There's a lot of people who are going to get in trouble. But I don't know. Do you think that Trump can just start handing out blank pardons? Be like, you can just fill them in. There's too many people.
Oh, who will allow him pardoning power? I'm sure he'd, of course.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? Let's see. Storage Yard resident has a statement for you, Tamra, that I don't know if this is true.
Oh boy.
Tamra would be so happy if that old witch Hillary had won the election. Now, I don't think that that's something that I feel like you've made that statement before.
Yeah, that's curious. Before I answer to that, I wonder what would make you think that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not anything we've talked about. Look, we spent 3 solid minutes talking about Santa Claus. So, and...
Is he saying Hillary's Mrs. Claus?
Oh, well... I don't know, because that would imply that Bubba is Santa.
Who knows?
And I don't think he should be going down that many chimneys.
Here's a little bit of profiling. I'd say that a lot of people, and before the election in 2016, a lot of Republican acquaintances of mine assumed I was voting for Hillary for no other reason than the fact that I am a white woman, and they just assume you're voting for the candidate that looks the most like you.
Well, then that would, and look, it's a joke that's often made, but then I think that if that were the case, the only people voting for Trump would have been Oompa Loompas and The Simpsons. I don't know anyone else who would have possibly voted for someone who looks like him. No, but I mean, honestly, that was definitely an assumption. First of all, women, it was assumed, especially. I don't even know about especially white women. Just it seemed like if you're a woman, of course you want Hillary to be president, But I think that a lot of people who voted in that election, whoever they actually checked off or inked off or had a machine switch and give the opposite of what they tried to put in, they were voting for like, well, this person is to me the worst person ever, so I'm voting for this other person. And although it was a very unpopular opinion on this panel, people felt that way about Hillary. It was just like, no, she's the worst person in the world. I don't want her to be president, so that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump. I'm not going to throw a vote away for Evan McMullin.
Oh yeah, I've met people who did that. Now, what's interesting is that because I joined this panel like after the election, so I don't even know, and don't tell me either. I don't even know.
If I voted,
you've said a couple comments about Chelsea and Bernie, but I'm not even. I'm not clear. I don't know.
Well, Chelsea's, and we're not talking about Chelsea Clinton. We're talking about Chelsea Galicia, who's usually here on this panel. She's not in Hong Kong, by the way.
I don't know who anybody...
She does not have a letter excusing her from attending this panel today. But Scott, that was legit.
So I'm only saying this because of the fact that I feel like as a panel, none of aside from obviously we're liberals, that. We're left-leaning, but aside from that, I don't even know who everybody on this panel was in favor of, so I can't.
Well,
so
Chelsea
I'm surprised
is a very vocal.
No, don't tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to know.
No, she likes Bernie, but
I kind of didn't want to know.
Bernie wasn't on the ballot. So, I mean, it's that same statement of there were 2 names. So she was going to vote for one, and I think a lot of us certainly felt that way. It's like, oh, well, I don't like anybody. And then it's like, you could have voted for somebody else. There were other candidates, but what? We had somebody from Evan McMullin's campaign on the Trump versus Hillary show, but it was just more because they took our call.
I voted for Gary Johnson. God.
People did, but
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
Anyway, so the gist of all of this is that you have a lot of people that want Trump to face jail time. Adam Schiff very publicly said earlier this week that Trump may face the real prospect of jail time, but that's like his Christmas list. That's like that's his fan fiction.
He's a glass half full kind of guy.
He's a glass half impeached kind of guy. So I think that I find it hard to believe. I'm always intrigued by this idea that people who think like he just won't want to run again because it's just been too much of a headache. I think he would run again and win, and then once he proved that, then he'd resign. He doesn't want to not run again. He might not want to be president for 8 years, but I think he needs to prove that he can win again. He's just like he needs to win bigger because what bothers him more than anything. He talks about Hillary all the time is because she got more votes than he did. He won the Electoral College. He actually, I'm not saying that, but that drives him crazy because of the way he talks about it. So he's just like, I just got to get more votes. I got to get more votes than Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Tamra Brown. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. Just something to think about.
Well, that's why I'm working for Santa, because I got to raise that sweet campaign money.
Well,
that's what I asked for Christmas.
So President Trump has parted ways, or will part ways soon, with General Kelly, his chief of staff, and he had it all figured out. Who his new chief of staff was going to be. He was going to just go ahead and pluck Nick Ayers from Pence's. Basically, he's Pence's chief of staff. Not basically, that's what he was. And this was going to be all tied up in a bow. And then all of a sudden, when you're going to be the vice president's chief of staff, the vetting stops at a certain point. We're going to be the president's chief of staff, and there's like a $54 million income that is it's a little shady, and they don't think it might hold up to the kind of scrutiny. It's like guys who stop running for office after they hit like governor or maybe even House or Senate. They're just people that you're like, yeah, I don't know why Mario Cuomo never ran for president. He was so popular. Well, just maybe there was something there. I don't know. Rudy Giuliani stopped running for president because he had a headache, basically. So, there's a lot of questions. And this is one of those guys who's like, yeah. So now I think he has to also resign as he kind of in being considered for the promotion. He's probably going to lose his job at the other, his existing job. Which, my lesson for the kids out there: never go for the brass ring. Just be happy with what you got. Don't try to better yourself. Do you think that it's at all surprising, Tamra, that shady business dealings and questionable income is something that could get you barred from a job at the White House?
Yeah. I'm completely surprised because, who was the guy, the domestic abuser? They clearly don't vet all that well.
Wait, I don't want to say the wrong name. I almost said it, but
yeah.
I don't want to. In fact, I know I would have said the wrong name. But yeah, I know.
I
you're
can't think of
about.
His name either.
His name was Rob, but I don't want to say the wrong last name.
What I wonder is, and there's times like these when I wish that we had a Republican on the panel, because I want to understand if everything's all well and good within this administration and they are doing the job that you want them to do. What is your justification for the just aggressive turnover that this administration has? How do conservatives explain how out of the ordinary this is to just have so many firings and resignations and just fast in 2 years the amount of turnover of staff that there's been? How do conservatives justify that?
Rob Porter is the gentleman's name.
Rob Porter.
And I would have said the wrong name, so that's why I looked it up. So I would have said Rob Tamra Brown, and that would have been just really embarrassing. So I mean, look, it's reminiscent of the 80s New York Yankees when George Steinbrenner would fire manager Billy Martin in particular, hire him back, fire him again. You go through a lot of people, and look, I mentioned George Steinbrenner because not that different than President Trump. You could tell that they were tight.
They pals?
So, yeah, I think they might have been pals. So it's just like, we'll probably look, legitimately, a job in any White House, you're going to burn out pretty quickly. That's why you don't see a lot of people. You don't see a chief of staff, a press secretary. You don't see those people stick around for years and years. Even people who seemed really good at those jobs.
You see them stick around for 4, though.
Well, you might see them stick around for 2. Let's just say that, because those jobs are so high stress.
But even that would be a tall order.
What I'm saying is we haven't gotten close to that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Pence has put his resume up on Monster.com. Is that an old reference? It probably is. But that's a place where you can find work.
Well, if it is an old reference, that would be where Pence would post
it. That's true. He wouldn't go to LinkedIn.
He's posting on MySpace right now. If anybody has any recommendations for some part-time work.
But to your point, it is interesting that there are so many people who resign. And look, General Kelly, you kind of thought like, all right, you definitely need some grown-ups in there. I mean, he was the one who was like basically right away like, yeah, Omarosa needs to go. You know, we're trying to run a business here. You know, we're not trying to do the next season of, you know, White House Apprentice. Although I'm surprised, in all honesty, that some
That hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in term 2. So he seemed like he would be a good fit because he would kind of get things in line. He'd just keep everything in order. But apparently, that's not what really people want over there, and by people I mean the president. So, were you surprised that his tenure was so short, or did it just seem like, oh no, he's not going to have patience for this nonsense?
John Kelly's?
Yeah.
I think as soon as we start hearing the reports about like there's he said this, he called President Trump dim-witted, and President Trump said that he's as soon as every time we've gotten word that things aren't going well with somebody, and then next thing you know they're out. So that's how every single person who has resigned or been fired, we've heard these inklings before it actually happened. So
yeah, I mean, you hear enough of these things. You know, you heard things that Sessions apparently said, and you know they get smoothed over within like a day or two. But all of those people that allegedly said those things, they didn't get fired right away, but they did all end up being, and we talked about it on the show, but I far from an admirer of Jeff Sessions, I did love his resignation letter. You know, it's like, because you insisted on it, I'm resigning. You know, it's like, oh, you're not going to fire me? All right. So I think, yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of turnover. You know who's surprised me for sticking around so long? Kellyanne Conway.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
No.
Because
they will have to drag her out of there. Like they will have to.
Who is going to do a better job than her? They can't find a better person for that.
And if somebody wanted to find good impressions of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, where would they go to find those? Is there anywhere out there on the internet where they can find?
Look, Google Tamra Brown. Hey Tamra on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Can we subscribe there?
Oh, please do.
Okay, great. Well,
at your leisure.
You know, you don't get a lot of impressions of her. So.
I am, earlier this year when there was rumors that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was going to be out, and then at some point they said something about like, oh well, November that might be when she finally resigns, and then that has come and gone, and I'm just kind of like, well, for me personally, I'm happy that she's still around. It's just she's one of them. As I just said, like you heard these inklings that people would be out ahead of time, and then they eventually did either get fired or resign, but she's one that I'm surprised she's still hanging in there.
You know, and by all reports, you know, she was able to get President Trump to re-lower the flags after John McCain passed away, you know, for his funeral.
That was her doing?
Supposedly. And so the fact that she has that kind of sway, I think Trump could either be impeached, lose the election, or some other variation of not being president anymore. And Sarah Sanders is going to still show up for work.
Absolutely.
A Democrat could win, and she is going to show up that day. She's going to show up, and she's like, I'm ready to do my job. I don't know about you losers, but there's a lot of questions that need answering. And, you know, I'm not going to take any you-know-what from Jim Acosta. So a lot of talk about who could possibly beat President Trump if Democrats have to remove him from office in the old-fashioned way, have somebody that's, you know, responds better with the people, who gets more votes, but more importantly gets more electoral votes, because that's what it really comes down to. Somebody who is willing to visit Wisconsin during their campaign. And I feel a little surprised that, question the source, of course, but Beto ORourke has narrowly topped a wide open Move On, yes, that MoveOn.org, 2020 presidential straw poll. Joe Biden is the runner-up. And we talked a lot about Beto in the wake of that election. I think you were here at that point, Tamra. I mean, as red as Texas is, it's like...
He did pretty well, considering.
He did well, but he did lose. So, when you have your young presidential, hopeful who comes onto the scene and surprises people, it's usually going to be like a Barack Obama who wins their election, who actually is in office. Because now, I mean, he's just a guy now. Like he's not in like a state senate. He's not anywhere. He's just he's just polishing up that skateboard. Just waiting. So, but if your two choices are Beto ORourke or Joe Biden, just for hypothetical sake, well, I know Chelsea loves Joe Biden, but he's an older guy. And I know President Trump is old. That's not the way to win, is to like, hey, that guy who's been around for a long time in public life and is a little bit of a joke, Joe Biden. We're going to go ahead and run him. Now, that debate with him and Trump would be amazing. I would like them to debate and have Joe not run for president because I would just like to see it. Do you think they're looking in the right places, Tamra?
I think it's too early to say, but Beto, it would be a possible option, but I wouldn't rule out. I wouldn't place Joe Biden. MoveOn.org, sure, it puts Joe Biden in second place, but like, let's not forget that the baby boomer generation, even though they're aging and they're still the largest generation. So I think that we're neglecting to. Yes, young people get fired up about a candidate, but the old people still dominate politics, and so who are they going to vote for?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's talk about people who have inspired varying degrees of movements. 1, Bernie Sanders. 2, Donald Trump. Guys who are in their 70s.
Yeah.
So you can get a groundswell of support on smaller state levels, but I mean, even when Bill Clinton won in 1992, he was young, but he was in his 50s. I mean, I think he was. I don't know. He was young, but again, he wasn't what they're necessarily looking for. But they'd probably welcome a guy who's like 50 at this point. That would be young, and that's probably a problem with what the Democratic Party is trying to do. In the chat, Lady Goth suggests Gillum. The Demonaut said I would vote for Tulsi Gabbard, even though I'm not a Democrat anymore. A lot of support.
Is she making up names?
Well, I think... are
these Lord of the Rings characters?
I think
I'm not aware
Gabbard
of?
is a typo, and I think it's Gabbard or something. Or am I thinking of Gabbard?
Kathy Lee Gifford? Is that why she resigned?
Well,
is that why she retired?
I did see that Kathy Lee is leaving the Today Show.
She resigned today.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's...
by the way, I'd vote for Hoda.
I'd vote for Hoda.
Yeah,
I wouldn't vote for.
I wouldn't vote for Boozy Susie over there with her. Joining us now on the couch, our friend Al Gragg. Al, how are you?
Hey, what's up, Christian? Good to see you.
Put the mic a little bit closer to your mouth. There you go.
Hey, what's up? Hey, Tamra, you guys.
Going
Apologize for being late. My boy Christian.
No, you've been here the whole time. I don't know what you're talking about. I just forgot to ask you questions.
I've been holding my peace.
You get in a lot of trouble for that these days. In any case, so what we're kind of talking about is, the idea of, well, somebody's got to be able to beat Trump, but the Democrats don't seem to have those clear-cut people. We were talking about, there was a MoveOn.org poll that has Beto ORourke in the top slot. Right beneath him is Joe Biden. Not too far down the list is also Bernie Sanders. And at least Beto ORourke is a younger, up and coming candidate. But I think that these older candidates who've been trotted out before are not really going to be their strong suit. What say you?
I agree 100%, and I think we kind of touched on this last time. Joe Biden. Beto ORourke is new, kind of like new and shiny.
Sure.
But as you go down further on the list, and people are talking about Hillary running, and the Democrats, I don't think they have an exciting candidate, a transformative candidate. The only candidate I think they could run that would beat Trump is maybe like another Obama. But at this point in time,
like Michelle Obama?
Yeah, and I don't think she wants to go near that job.
She said she doesn't, but
yeah, exactly.
Hillary says that too. So
yeah, Michelle Obama, Oprah, whatever. But I think that what we're learning is that maybe the Democrats just better let the Trump administration just fail. If somebody's failing, get out of their way. And they may not have a big candidate coming up for the next election. Personally, not that I'm a strategist, but if I were, I would let all this Russia talk and the hearings go forward. Trump's numbers are dwindling, and we always thought his base was going to be with him no matter what. But at the same time, we're finding out even members of his own party, like the deeper these investigation gets, more of his own party are abandoning him. So I would just say, like, get out of the way and then, wait till it's clear.
Do you think they should get out of the way for a second Trump term, or do you think that that they should at least have a viable candidate out there? Because look, we were talking about 2020. In mere weeks, it's going to be January 2019, which is, so we're a little bit over a year from New Hampshire and Iowa. And I think I'm going to break out into hives thinking about how close we are to all that stuff because of how it drones on. So really in the next few months, you're going to have the people who not only declare for running for president, but the people who actually at least have advisors who think they can win. Do you think those people should sit it out because, just basically let the Trump administration just kind of start? I don't want to use death metaphors, but basically be their own undoing.
I think sometimes people's ego won't let them sit out. I think Joe Biden has always wanted to be president. He loved being vice president. And he's threatened to run before. So somebody
Threatened.
threatened to run.
He has threatened.
He's threatened to run before, and I love Joe Biden. Joe Biden. That's another guy. Joe Biden's politics. I think he's just, he's not as that politically savvy, and he's really gaffe prone. And let's say they pair him up like him and Beto. That might be a good running pair, because we have to run somebody, or the Democrats, they have to run somebody, even if they have a strong team. Let's say they run that team. I think that might be their strongest pair, and I guess it just might see. We just have to wait till later in 2019 to see.
The way you're talking, it's sort of like how you end up with Walter Mondale or Michael Dukakis, somebody that just loses big, and of course you end up with Michael Dukakis because Gary Hartz is following you around, but that's besides the point. So I think that this might be the time that if you have a good, strong candidate, I think that's what it would take.
Which we don't have, though. Who do you suggest, Chris?
I see. That's the problem. Is I don't see anybody.
I don't see anybody either.
It's so early.
But again, in 3 months, it stops being early.
But in at this point in 2014, I fired up about anybody? I was not. So
no, but in 2014, everybody knew Hillary was going to run again. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of knew that.
Okay, so we're lacking our assumed candidate. I guess is why people are like panicking. But I feel like this, like, oh no, we're not going to have anybody. And I understand, like, we're so eager to get Trump out of the White House that, yeah, we're eager to like find somebody who's capable of doing that. But it's just not. These things take time. And
well, I do think it's the only way to really replace Trump as president. I think all of the hopes for impeachment or just arrest, all that sort of thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, trust me, I'm not saying that I
don't think
I'm
you were
complacent about getting a Democrat to take, not give him a second term, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not nervous about, are we going to have a candidate? We're going to have some great candidates that I'm going to personally have trouble deciding who I like better. I know that that's going to happen. So.
Well, good for you, because that shows you're inspired. Me personally, I'm not necessarily inspired by the
You will be. It's
hopefully
so early.
I will be. I love that you're thinking positive. And Christian, I want to throw this out to both of you guys. Remember when Bill Clinton got impeached? He got impeached in the House, but not the Senate.
Correct.
His second term, he was so bogged down by the scandal, and he lost a lot of.
It's the last couple years of it, because he was reelected in '96,
right,
and the Lewinsky news broke in the beginning of '98. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
the last part of his second term,
he was limping.
There was just nothing.
Yeah. He was, he was, what is that
Interesting
called?
choice to word limping, but anyway.
But my point is like, I think that maybe what happens to Trump, even if he manages to win the next election.
Look, and we have less than a minute, but having divided government as of January, it's going to be what Washington does best: put the brakes on everything, get hardly anything done. And that is going to slow down what the Trump administration is capable of. To your point, if you stay out of their way, you figure eventually, look, there's a lot of breaks in the economy that we're starting to see, and I don't know if the good part was Obama's doing or Trump's doing, but if it's bad when people go to vote, it almost doesn't matter, So we'll have to keep an eye on all of this. And Al, we do appreciate you joining us here. But we will hopefully catch up with you in the new year. A programming note, as they say. This is our last show for 2018.
Hey.
So we will be back on Tuesday, January 8th in 2019, which actually will be, we'll have a new House of Representatives. We'll have a new Senate, but it's going to basically be the same as the old Senate. Al, where do people find you on social media?
Everybody find me on IG at alg_Jamaica House Film. alg_Jamaica House Film.
And Tamra, where do people find you?
Find me on YouTube at Hey Tamra.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And tomorrow night, the season finale of South Park, 10 p.m. Pacific, right here on AfterBuzz. I hope everybody has a happy holiday season, an all-inclusive holiday season, and a Merry New Year as well. And we will see you all in a little bit less than a month. Happy New Year, everybody.
Merry New Year!
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.